Today I'm here to present SB 1070, which strengthens protections for houses of worship by giving courts the tools they need to respond to serious, coordinated disruptions of religious services. Across California, we're seeing an increase in intentional disruptions of worship services. These are not peaceful protests on sidewalks. They're incidents where individuals are blocking entrances, they're infiltrating services, shouting through bullhorns, and intimidating congregants during worship. We've seen this all across California. In Los Angeles, a mob blocked access to Addis Torah Synagogue. In Carlsbad, agitators entered the Mission Church and disrupted the service from inside the sanctuary. In San Diego County, a group of individuals used sirens and intimidation tactics during an interfaith service that was a worship event. A national report documented that over 400 hostile acts against houses of faith in 2024 and included 40 from California. That's 10% of the nation's attacks on our faith and worship services across the nation happen right here in this state. No one should fear gathering to pray. As Americans, this is our First Amendment right. Current law treats all intentional disruptions of worship services as misdemeanors, regardless of how serious, coordinated, or repeated the conduct is. Hate crime statutes is a non-workable response to these cases, since those laws require proof on bias against the religion, that it was substantial and a motivating factor, which is difficult to prove when the individuals claim they're protesting a political issue. As a result, serious disruptions that have created disruptions in California and across our nation, but specifically here, the 40 that were referenced, they fall into a gap where the penalties do not match the conduct. SB 1070 addresses that gap by creating a wobbler offense. It gives us judicial discretion. Less serious incidences remain misdemeanors. But when disruptions are coordinated, repeated, particularly egregious, prosecutors and the courts have the discretion to charge them as felonies. A felony can include a fine up to $5,000 and county jail for 16 months, 2 years, or 3 years, depending on the offense. This approach increases deterrence and ensures courts have the flexibility to impose fair, proportionate penalties. I also want to be clear about this bill that what it does not do. It does not limit peaceful protest in public spaces. Places of worship are private property, and this bill regulates intentional disruption inside those spaces not protected by speech. It protects the constitutional rights to freely exercise religion and assemble peacefully. This bill has strong support from faith communities across our state. Over 195 faith leaders have signed on, including pastors, rabbis, imams, grantees, and priests representing diverse faith services. Today, with me here to testify is Milton Matchak, a constitutional attorney, and Tanner DeBella, the president of American Council.
You each had 2 minutes to address the committee on the bill.
Thank you. Honorable Chair and Senators, my name is Milton Matchak. I'm a former deputy district attorney, retired after 18 and a half years, and I currently work as a staff attorney with Pacific Justice Institute, a nonprofit law firm dedicated to, among other things, the protection of our First Amendment right to freedom of religion. SB 1070 simply amends Penal Code Section 302 into a wobbler, which, as you all know, means that a violation of 302 can be charged as either a misdemeanor or a felony. This amendment would give prosecutors and courts discretion, one, depending on the circumstances of the violation of PC 302, to charge the crime as a felony or misdemeanor, and or number two, based on the prior criminal history of the suspected perpetrator, to charge as a misdemeanor or a felony as appropriate. This amendment puts more teeth into PC 302, adds additional force behind it to protect the rights of California citizens to worship in their churches and houses of worship with confidence they are protected by the law. It gives California a stronger law to protect the First Amendment rights to freedom of religion and freedom of assembly. Amending Penal Code Section 302 to a wobbler is really a pro-victim choice, putting victims ahead of perpetrators. This bill is similar to the Federal FACE Act, which has support, I believe, from both sides of the political divide. Senate Bill 1070 puts more force behind the state's attempts to prevent breaches of the peace at places of worship. That should be something that everyone can agree on. Again, SB 1070 does not substantively change or alter Penal Code Section 302 at all. It changes no language except to make it a wobbler and a more powerful tool in that a felony can be charged when appropriate. Thank you. I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Tanner DeBella. I am a pastor in Sacramento and Rockland, California, and I'm a sponsor of Senate Bill 1070. I have been a witness to disruption in interruption in churches, in my church over the years. Senate Bill 1070 is about protecting something basic, protecting something sacred, and something every free society should defend: the right of people to worship without intimidation, harassment, or chaos. The bill, as Senator Grove said, is not about silencing disagreement, and it's not about restricting free speech. People are free to disagree. They are free to protest. But there is a line between expressing disagreement and intentionally disrupting a worship service. There is a line between public debate and targeted interference. There is a line between liberty and disorder. And when that line is crossed, the law should be clear, and that is why I support Senate Bill 1070. This bill says something simple but important. People of faith should not have to choose between gathering for worship and wondering whether service will be targeted. Churches feed the poor, they counsel families, they care for widows, they serve children, they mentor young people, and they stand with communities in crisis. They are often the first place that people run to when their lives fall apart. Religious liberty is not just the right to believe something in your heart, it is the right to live it, practice it, and gather around it in peace. Senate Bill 1070 is a necessary and reasonable step to protect that freedom. This should not be partisan, it should not be controversial. No one should support the disruption of worship. No one should be comfortable with intimidation aimed at people gathered in prayer. Today, we are asking our leaders to stand where they should have always stood, on the side of peace, order, and the fundamental right to worship freely. Thank you.
Very much. We'll not take any other members of the public wishing to express support for Senate Bill 1070. If you can please come forward and state your name, organization, and position on the bill.
Emily Blanchard Sager with the Gualco Group on behalf of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in support of 1070. Thank you.
Emily Campbell with the California Baptist Capital Ministry on behalf of 5 California Baptist churches: South Coast Baptist in Santa Barbara, Freedom's Way in Santa Clarita, Mountain Avenue in Banning, Solid Rock Baptist Tabernacle in Bellflower, and Silicon Valley Chinese Baptist in Santa Clara in support.
Brock Campbell from the California Baptist Capital Ministry on behalf of 6 California Baptist churches: Ridgewood Heights in Eureka, Faith in Sheridan, Calvary in American Canyon, New Testament in Hanford, Faith in Atascadero, and Lighthouse in Santa Maria. Thank you. And support. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Reverend Jose Velasquez. I pastor a multi-campus church in Temecula, Menifee, and in Homeland, and I'm here in support of Senate Bill 1070. Thank you.
God bless you guys. My name is Judy Velasquez. I am also co-lead pastor with Jose Velasquez, pastors in Temecula Valley, and we are in support of SB 1070. God bless you.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Keller, president of the California Family Council, and also here representing over 2,200 multi-ethnic Southern Baptist churches in the Southern Baptist Convention here in the state of California. Grateful to Senator Grove for bringing this very important piece of legislation forward. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Good morning. My name is Tiffany Baker. I'm the founder of the Empowerment Center. We've served youth and family in Temecula Valley for 25 years. And I want to say I am in support of this bill because I want our children to come back to the house of the Lord.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Scott Thompson, pastor of River of Life Church, city councilman up in Orville. Also want to lend my support for this bill 1070. I support our houses of worship. I believe it's the primary role of government to protect our freedoms. Of those, essential is our freedom to worship. So thank you for considering this.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much for being here. We'll now take up to 2 principal witnesses in opposition to SB 1070.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Jim Lindberg on behalf of the Friends Committee on Legislation of California, a public interest lobby founded by members of the Religious Society of Friends in 1952. Friends is synonymous with the word Quakers. Regardless, the Friends Committee has taken an opposed position on Senate Bill 1070. Friends have a long history of religious persecution, and Friends cherish the right to worship freely without being obstructed by state actors or non-state actors, the former being protected by the First Amendment. Friends also have a long history of advocacy and justice reform, and we know of the long-term harm created by an over-reliance on incarceration, especially for people from underserved, marginalized communities of color. The enduring consequences of a felony conviction leads to discrimination in housing, employment, student loans, other important benefits, which negatively impacts families and creates a permanent underclass. In a nutshell, the behavior sanctioned in this bill does not rise to the level of a felony. The challenge for Friends and for many people of faith is how do we address harm and hold people accountable without creating more harm? The behaviors sanctioned in this bill would lend themselves to a restorative justice solution involving ongoing dialogue between the victims and the offender, victor-offender mediation, all in a supervised setting. And quite frankly, a person who disrupts a religious service could very well be someone in need of help, not punishment. Our fear is that Friends meetings would be dissuaded from contacting authorities if it could result in the harm of a felony conviction. And for all of these reasons, we ask the committee to reject this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other principal witnesses in opposition? Anyone else wishing to express opposition to SB 1070?
George Brampton on behalf of ACLU California Action in opposition, as the underlying statute is a content-based regulation. Thank you.
Margot George on behalf of the California Public Defenders Association and also the San Francisco Public Defender's Office in opposition. Thank you.
Liz Blum-Gutierrez on behalf of the LA County Public Defenders Union, Local 148, and Smart Justice California in opposition.
Elizabeth Kim on behalf of Initiate Justice in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to express opposition to SB 1070? Seeing no other members of the public wishing to testify, I'll bring it back to the committee for any questions or comments. Vice Chair Seyarto.
Thank you for your bill. Today's world is calling for us to increasingly crack down on some of the behaviors, because apparently the deterrents that we have now aren't working. And I understand we don't want to over-incarcerate and we don't want to create that environment. But the best people that have the control over that are the people that are perpetrating crimes that they know. They darn well know that they can get in serious trouble for doing. And this is becoming one of them. And it's not just a violent outburst in the courts or in churches, but we've also had shootings and things like that are born from these kind of this kind of activity. And so I don't think this bill goes too far in ratcheting it up to the next level. Judges still have discretion on the wobbler, whether what is occurring rises to that level, and therefore I'll be supporting it, and I'll move the bill.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Senator Caballero, then Cortese.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to have this discussion here today. Let me just say that I am as concerned as you are at the disruption of religious services and the vitriol that seems to be so common nowadays, the lack of respect and the lack of decorum the idea that someone would come into a religious setting and disturb it is I think should be abhorrent to all of us. But it's always happened. It's just gotten uglier. If, in fact, there's a violent outburst or a shooting, that's already a felony. So we have deterrents for violence. These are, as I understand it, these are words, and we're talking about, I do appreciate the context of content-based defense. I was trying to figure out what we were regulating, and it really is content-based offense. The idea that we would make it a felony for someone to walk into a church and not act violently, but to object for whatever reason, even if we disagree with it, that's part of the foundation of our Constitution, is the ability to disagree. And as disagreeable as it is, I do agree that restorative justice is the place where it really where it needs to go, and there are more opportunities to have a discussion about why is this happening and what can we do differently and how can we bring you in and make you part of our church. So I won't be supporting the bill. I don't think we want to make this a felony. And what it does is it just creates, I think, more opportunities for people to wonder, what are we really trying to do? I don't want to get into a religious discussion here because I just don't. But people have forgotten what peace looks like and what talking to people looks like and what it means to open your hearts and to say, what can we do? Would you like a meal? Can we bring you in and make you part of a group that's studying the Bible, that is working towards peace and that really believes in peace? And anyway, enough of that. I just don't think making it a felony is the right way to go. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Cortese.
Yeah, I have very similar position or explanation for the position as Senator Caballero. I can't imagine the number of circumstances I've seen in my own Catholic church over the years, resulting in which have been rude and disruptive, sometimes by folks who perhaps aren't functioning with the full ability to form intent. To send them to CDCR under a felony, as far as I'm concerned, is a bridge too far. I understand that you could be jailed for 1 year under current law, which I think is pretty extreme for a lot of the behavior that would have to be parsed out here. Not all. I do believe that, as those of us who went to law school learned, if somebody comes walking into a church and tries to incite a riot, under the fighting words definition of what constitutes that kind of speech that Supreme Court's upheld for years and years and years, there's remedies for that. But the bill, at least as it's written currently, and I assume that's the way it wants to stay going forward, speaks very directly to rude speech, which is, I can't imagine a definition that gets you from rude speech to the fighting words or to inciting a riot, which, from my sense of the way things should be, it would be essentially the minimum justification for this kind of a penalty, a felony penalty. So I like enough where we are with law currently. I suppose there may be a lot of judges that are trying to redirect folks away from incarceration under the misdemeanor laws, and a lot of DAs who won't even go after misdemeanors, as we know, under almost anything. But that's something for the judicial system to sort out and to figure out how they want to deal with it. For us to mandate or even to create an option for a felony for this kind of behavior is a bridge too far for me.
Thank you. I'd like to respond a little bit to that. I'm well aware that if somebody walks into a church and starts shooting it up, that there's current laws that govern that. And we're not talking about somebody that goes in and says a few words and then leaves. We're talking about people that go in and intimidate, and that's where the judge's discretion comes into play in this bill. All this is doing is giving a judge the discretion to determine to what level the occurrence rises to. If they're going into a church and intimidating people and scaring them and scaring the kids and scaring all the worshipers into not wanting to be able to come back again and again to worship peacefully, I think a stronger deterrent is needed, and that's something for a judge to decide. I think we're kind of getting caught up in the. It sounds like people are concerned that this is an automatic jail sentence. It is not, but it is a stiffer penalty, or at least gives the judge the discretion to make that determination as the behavior of people is starting to be to escalate, and it's causing people's disruptions in their lives, and I think it's incumbent on us to at least send a message that we do care what happens, and so I appreciate the concerns, but I don't align my concerns with that. I think this bill is doing an appropriate level of response to what is occurring today.
Thank you. We are discussing SB 1070 currently. Senator Wiener, do you wish to speak on this bill?
Thank you, and I apologize for being a little late today. And I appreciate the author brought that. I mean, this has been, there have been issues, of course, with synagogues as well that have been targeted in some pretty egregious ways, particularly in terms of harassing people who are entering and exiting synagogues. And so I understand why the author is bringing this. I know the Jewish Caucus actually has a priority bill, or I don't know if it's been designated a priority yet, but that Assemblymember Bauer-Cahan has introduced in the Assembly to deal with buffer zones in terms of protesting. So to acknowledge the right to protest, but have a buffer zone so that you're not impeding people's ability to actually enter the place of worship. If I recall correctly, I believe it's either a misdemeanor or a wobblet. I don't remember which. I do have concerns with the possibility of this being a felony. There's existing and I know that's the point of the bill, right? To turn it from a misdemeanor into a wobbler. That's something that's challenging for me to make it the potential for a felony for this. So I'm not in any way taking away from the point of the bill or the rationale behind it, because that does cause me concern as well. But it's the felony aspect that is sort of weighing on me.
Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee? I share Senator Wiener's perspective on this. This is a very serious issue. No one should be afraid to go to a place of worship. And I'll just note in the analysis there are 4 pages of citations of existing penal code sections that govern a variety of circumstances where somebody threatens, somebody inflicts physical harm, somebody destroys religious real property, somebody uses force or physical obstruction to prevent somebody from worshiping. So there is, rightfully so in California, a body of law to establish various penalties, including criminal penalties, for people that are intentionally trying to disrupt or threaten people who want to exercise their right, their fundamental right to worship peacefully in the state of California. So I appreciate the intent of this bill, but I share the concern about adding a felony provision to this existing Penal Code Section 302. And I'll just have to say, I wasn't on the legislature when Penal Code 302 was adopted. I probably wouldn't have voted for it at the time it was brought forward. And I share the ACLU's analysis that I would argue that the existing penal code is an unconstitutional content-based regulation, because you can't actually, a judge can't determine whether Penal Code 302 is applicable unless you have to weigh the content of an individual's message. And I think there are just underlying constitutional issues with that law. I'll note, as was noted in the analysis, there was a case, this was referenced on page 8 of the analysis, the Cruz case. And while that case does provide guidance, I'm just reading from the analysis, the narrow scope of the analysis and specific procedural history suggests that it doesn't immunize Section 302 from the vagueness scrutiny, especially if the penalty is elevated to a felony. So I would argue elevating the penalty to a felony, aside from just the various concerns that have been expressed by members of the committee, may actually make this statute more constitutionally questionable. And I don't know whether that's something we want to do. And so to build on an existing statute that has constitutional issues, especially given the body of law that already exists, rightfully so, including the FACE Act, I have difficulty supporting that. And so on that basis, I will not be voting for the bill today. But I very much appreciate, why you bring this forward. I understand the concern. I think there's an existing body of law that exists in California that does provide adequate protections in cases where somebody physically obstructs access to a place of worship, somebody threatens somebody destroys property. But when we start getting into regulating the content of people's speech, it's a slippery slope. And that's why we have to really judge these issues on a case-by-case basis, and to make sure that we're creating a safe space, but we're also not infringing on people's fundamental constitutional rights. That's my perspective on this bill. But thank you very much for bringing it forward. And I'll turn it back over to you to close.
Very well, if you would like a response from him briefly.
I think we have a fundamental difference of opinion on this, so then that's fine.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to offer it up. Some headlines on the internet. California Jewish community is increasing its security among string of invasions into synagogues. Sacramento synagogue fire bombings. The press conference that we had this morning, where a rabbi spoke, and also some pastors, some that were here today during the testimony. We only get 2 witnesses for 2 minutes, and I understand that process, and it's the rules of the House and on every committee, right, to adjust the time that we have. But pastors got up and faith leaders got up and talked about having to use a human shield to keep perpetrators from entering the church. And when a gentleman that was in a service here in Rockland, California, walked out, he and his son had shaved heads. And the bullhorns and the screeching and the yelling that was going on and the hate that was perpetrated against them, and the disruption and following them to the car and harassing them all the way to the car from the church service out to their vehicle was despicable and disgusting. What they didn't know behind the scenes of that particular subject matter is that the father was just diagnosed with brain cancer, and the child shaved his head in solidarity with his father. Another situation described this morning again by the rabbi and other individuals that spoke at the press conference talked about an individual who brought a firearm into the church. And when that individual was detained or disrupted, that individual brought that firearm, later that individual was arrested for having body parts on his property. There is 40 cases that we are aware of that have been not just hate speech, not just what you would label, it's not a constitutional issue. People have the right to freely assemble peaceably. They don't have a right to impede on our First Amendment rights for freedom of worship, whether it's a synagogue, a gurdwara, a temple. It doesn't matter. All houses of faith should be protected under the same constitutional rights that we're allowing for perpetrators the right to come in and disrupt these services. You should have the freedom to worship in peace, and you should not have to tolerate individuals coming in with bullhorns, blocking entrances, any of that. I appreciate my colleague from San Francisco with a bill that the Jewish Caucus may or may not take up, maybe a buffer zone of 100 feet. That's what they did, and this body passed when it came to abortion clinics. You don't allow protesters within 100 feet of an abortion clinic. The governor signed that bill, but yet they can walk into a church and barricade the doors so that individuals cannot get in or get out, and they can terrorize them while they're in those church services. It is happening in the state of California. It is just a misdemeanor when they do that, and so this Bureau clearly makes it judicial discretion that it's something that's minimal. The judge has the right to say, look, please don't do that again. Don't enter the church. And then if it becomes a repeat issue where there's destruction and disruption and things that have been happening in our state, then the judge can actually offer a wobbler and make the penalties. The penalties here, like I said, are up to $5,000. It doesn't mean they are $5,000, and up to time in jail. There's no CDCR involvement in this bill because they do jail time, not prison time. Just to clarify my good colleague from the Bay Area's comment. And again, I do have a constitutional attorney here that can respond. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Senator. So I believe Vice Chair Seyarto moved the bill. Okay, so we have a motion. If the committee assistant can please call the roll.
SB 1070 Grove, motion is due pass to appropriations. Arreguín?
No.
Arreguín, no. Seyarto?
Aye.
Seyarto, aye. Caballero? No. Caballero, no. Cortese? No. Cortese, no. Pérez? No. Pérez, no. Wiener? No. Wiener, no. Bill fails.
The bill fails, but thank you for joining us today, and thank you. Move to reconsider without objection. So granted. Thank you.